I know that right here in this area there was a local election yesterday. Well, many days in the future, all depending on when you're viewing this. But at the same time, this two-party system that we have in America, this elections that are really run by Democrats and Republicans, with independents only barely scraping their way through, well, it's somewhat of a problem. And we're going to tackle that today. I'm Cover Killer Nation, and we are going to look at the two-party system and destroy it for what it is. So for a long time, the running theory has been Democrats versus Republicans. There's never been any person that's been within a third party or an independent that seems to have done enough in order to garner serious attention. There have been a couple of individuals that have used the independent totem as a way to get their voice out there and have somewhat broken through, but whenever it gets to the actual elections themselves, they tend to have to declare a party in order to really have any sort of chance of victory, and that's part of the problem with the two-party system. I use air quotes for that because there has never been any real definition that only two parties can exist and only two parties can be the serious heavyweights for the presidency or any other office within the land. Of course, we have had independent senators, and one of, in fact, of the presidential candidates for 2016, Bernie Sanders, has really exhibited throughout his career that you can be an independent and you can win races, but even he has declared a party for the 2016 election, opting to go Democratic. A couple of years ago, it was Ron Paul that was coming out as a more radical independent that was proposing a lot of unique and off-the-chain ideas. He eventually went Republican and didn't even secure the nomination. So what's wrong here? Why is it that whenever it comes to the actual elections, we have to have it be Democrat versus Republican here in America? And I'm sure that those of you who are from abroad have experienced similar, terrible things or similar problems that exist within your own political system, whether it seems that monarchy just isn't working out anymore, either that or your own form of democracy is something that's failing. It seems as though these two-party ideas that America exhibits has kind of outlived its worth, and here's the reason why. Democrats and Republicans have really garnered a reputation over the past number of years. It's become to the point now where any election is not causing as much voter turnout because citizens are becoming concerned that it's all going to be just more of the same. And by more of the same, they don't necessarily just mean more of what the past president, whether it be Obama or Bush, has to offer or offered. Instead, it's more of the same just from the political spectrum, period. A lot of high, lofty promises that seem to really champion ideas of hope, change, and America becoming great again. And that never really seemed to come to fruition. That never seemed to actually occur. And we've seen this sort of dismissive theory toward politics for about at least 10 to 15 years now. It really seems to be a post-9/11 idea, either that or a post-2000s election idea. But this has been the regular in American politics for literally as long as most of the viewers, I'm sure, here have been alive. It's always been Democrat v. Republican, and weirdly enough, the two parties have actually flip-flopped their values throughout the course of their own history. And there was also the Whig Party that was alive during the 1800s that sort of showcased a little mix of both, but seemed to lean more toward what traditional Democrats were offering. Or not. They were weird. They were an interesting cat, that's certainly for sure. But we've never really seen an independent or a member of the Green Party really make some large waves. There are other parties out there, Libertarians, Greens, as well as others, and the only one of note that seems to really have made and moved mountains throughout the course of a couple of elections was Ross Perot, and he came nowhere close to winning any of the elections that he was a part of. And in fact, it's interesting to note that most people feel that his influence in the 2000 election was what caused Bush to win Florida. But the two-party system is one that seems to have concrete values that directly oppose one another, almost as though elections now are being treated as steel cage matches, where it's a battle of thoughts and a battle of words, as opposed to a battle of two men kicking the shit out of each other. To be perfectly honest, if that's what a presidential campaign actually was, there's a good chance that it may be a lot more fun and may engage the people. We are, after all, a bit barbaric. But the two-party system has its shortcomings because even though the citizenship seems to have this poor thought, this poor rapport for both parties really at this stage of the game, they still go out there and vote for the same individuals. They literally decide to go out there and put their vote on to somebody who's literally the lesser of two evils, instead of further acknowledging the political spectrum and perhaps finding somebody that matches their ideologies a lot more, even if they're not necessarily the most popular of candidates. And that goes back to the idea that my vote really doesn't count, or my vote will be wasted if I go for somebody who doesn't have a chance for winning, which is a silly philosophy. If you think about some of the earliest elections that were in America, back whenever the system was relatively new, they were very simple elections. And to think that George Washington was going to be the first president of this country was really a bit of a formality at the stage in which it happened, considering all that he had done in order to aid the nation throughout its separation from Britain. But whenever we move forward, there have been some clear-cut frontrunners that definitely seem to want to deliver change, but recently it's been rife with controversy. A lot of people felt that JFK used his money and his power, the power of his family, in order to get into the highest office in the land. Most people were kind of skeptical about Ronald Reagan, who was a former actor that turned politician, was going to be a really good president, and we saw sort of the fruits of that labor. And now we have George W. Bush, which followed a Bush that was unpopular, and he was unpopular. Obama, of course, with his ethnicity, was one that garnered a lot of dismissal based around that alone, which is stupid as shit. And now we have Donald Trump, which could potentially fire everybody. But the two-party system is one that needs an expansion. It needs to have other voices being heard, because two people alone are not going to be able to speak to the entire nation, let alone just the one that we end up electing in. And so having some different ideas, some different presentations of the issues, or perhaps just a party that's able to stay on the issues and not really drill things home to the point where it's boring, would really be a nice political change. Imagine if you had a third person that was running against the Democrats and the Republicans that was making a real sea change in the political spectrum. Imagine if Bernie Sanders actually was running as an independent. There's a very good chance that even though he would come nowhere close to winning, that he's going to now, as a Democrat potentially, if he secures the nomination, he would still be making enough waves where people would probably be calling him the second coming of Ross Perot, where he's actually going to be able to move mountains from an outsider's position, because he's been an independent throughout the course of most of his political history. But to have the establishment of a third party to really kick things into gear is certainly a thing that seems very positive for America, that may actually lead to more citizens believing in the system a bit more. As of right now, it almost seems like the Democrats and the Republicans are not political parties. They're instead rival corporations that are jousting for power and position. And the presidency essentially is brand dominance. And brand dominance is also established throughout holding the majority in the House of Representatives and the Senate. It gives you many abilities, and it gives you a lot of controlling power. Think of it as two rival mafias basically engaged in a massive countrywide turf war, because it's exactly what it feels like right now. And really, if we consider all the history, if we consider the way in which the mafia has been represented throughout time, especially at its height during Prohibition, is that really an idea, a concept that we want running our nation? And it's something that no doubt has its own metaphor abroad. It seems that the political system has become one that's easily bought and sold, and this is part of the reason why we need political revolution. For all that Bernie Sanders has talked about such a thing, he's also one that's been really drilling his core philosophies to the point where we're really not 100% sure how he's going to do it. Somebody like Donald Trump believes in the current system that we have, mainly because he feels that it's going to benefit him and joust him right into the office, considering that's what the people want. He once said famously that he would know exactly what to say or how to handle a campaign when the time was right, and that Fox News would literally propel him to the top, which in a strange way has happened, although it has not yet secured him any sort of nomination. Ben Carson seemed to be a man that was going to use his expertise, his field, his intelligence as a true propeller point, but instead his mouth has been his real downfall. Hillary has had scandals that has been her downfall, and many people still have a negative opinion about her husband, the former President Bill Clinton, after he got a blowjob. Which is a stupid reason to really feel negatively toward anybody, but in reality, that's how simple and stupid people are within the political realm. So the establishment of a third party or even a fourth party would actually cause a bit of a break from the norm. A break from the norm is kind of what this country needs. After all, we seem to be spinning our wheels here in 2015 and causing a lot more damage than good. Instead of spinning those wheels and getting out of the mud puddle that we are in, we're instead digging ourselves deeper into said puddle. And a little bit of change, a little bit of revolution, something to really turn people on their heels and actually cause them to believe in their country once again would certainly be a big and grand help. But what are some ideas that could potentially spark this? Who could potentially spark this? Is it one of you out there? Do you have the ideas in order to make this country great again? I know I certainly have a couple, and I can guarantee you that some people wouldn't want to hear them. And I'm guaranteeing you that most people would look at them with very dismissive eyes. But at the same time, maybe that's something that needs to be talked about. Maybe what I will do is that after this video is posted, the very next video that you see from Cover Killer Nation vs. the World would be 10 ways in which, if I were elected president, I would do my best to try to help this country. So let's do that. I'm CKN vs. the World. Leave your thoughts, your comments, your beliefs down in the comments box below. And I'm taking on topics one at a time and flushing them down, considering we need a reboot to this world that has been a long time coming. If you like what you've heard and you want to see it happen, hit the subscribe button and come along for the ride.